Hey everybody, Coach Stacie here with Ali, and this week we are continuing our month of talking about how to help your gymnast actually think positively. So last week we started talking about this idea that every action that your gymnast take is coming from the thoughts that she's thinking or the thoughts that he's thinking. I'm mostly going to say she, male gymnast too, works for everybody. But it starts with the thoughts that she's thinking. And most of the time, we're not aware of those thoughts. 95% of our time is being run by our subconscious brain that is unaware of what we're thinking, but yet we're still thinking things that are creating what actions we actually take. And so last week was all about finding those. So go back and listen to that. But then now this week is after you've found one, what do you do next? So, Ali, take us away.
Well, first, I'm going to bring this to a concept that most of you have probably heard of, and that's a thought swap. That's what we all like to try and do. We're like, okay, we have this negative thought, so let's think a positive one. That's great. And so we have this idea of, I'm going to use the most simple example for this one of, you tell your gymnast that they can't say can't. So I can't do it. And you want them to think I can do it. But here's the problem. If they are standing on that beam trying to do the series that they want to be doing and they don't actually believe that they can do it, they're going to say, I can do it. And their brain's going to be like, wait. No, you can't. You actually might miss your hands and fall on your head, not actually go for the connection, balk in the middle. This is terrifying. You're probably going to die and you probably shouldn't go. And so the gymnast is up there trying to say, I can do this. And all that's happening is their brain is saying, like, no, you can't, no, you can't, no, you can't, no, you can't. And it's the sole reason is it doesn't believe that new thought yet. Their brain isn't like, oh, yeah, sure, you can do it. Because when they do believe it, that's when it works. A thought swap works when the gymnast actually believes the thought they're trying to switch to. Okay. So that's why you've seen it work before. A gymnast has been able to try this new thought. They actually believe it. They do it great. But when it's not working, and you'll probably hear this from your gymnast a lot too, like, I'm trying to think positive. I'm really trying and I can't. That's why. And then that's exhausting for them. I mean, it is like actually like a fight battle, punching fists of like, and I think you guys have heard like the angel and the devil on your shoulder or the good and the bad guy or whatever. That's really what's happening. And they're just fighting. And so they're mentally exhausted, which makes them physically exhausted. And then their gymnastics, honestly, it goes downhill. And sometimes they really just aren't able to do it anymore at this point. So the idea here is we still want to find that wonderful thought that we're trying to get to. Okay. But we're going to, in the next few weeks, help them learn how to believe it. So, Stacie, I want you to kind of like dig into the whole concept of like what's going on in your brain from an old thought building to this new thought.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to geek out on the science just a little bit. So our brain creates what's called neural pathways. So those neural pathways, I like to think of them as roads. So it creates a road that it travels on whenever it's thinking something. And the more often you've traveled that road, the deeper and stronger and more powerful that neural pathway is. So the neural pathways that they use a lot are like, freeways. They're well lit. They've got signs. They're 4 lanes each way and they're fast to go on. And that's like, you're like, oh, am I going to take this back country road or am I going to take the freeway to get there? Well, I'm going to take the freeway. It's the fastest, easiest, whatever. So the neural pathways that they've been thinking for a long time are going to be very deeply ingrained. And then when they want to start thinking something new, they are literally creating a new road, creating a new neural pathway in their brain. Now, the reason that we learn so much when we're little is you're just like your brain is on fire in those first 7 years of your life, creating like billions of neural pathways just so fast. But as we get older, we create fewer and fewer, and we have some that are more well used. So for instance, if your gymnast believes I'm just not a good gymnast, or I'm not good at beam, I can't compete well, I always mess up when I try to compete. I'm too scared to go backwards. I'm afraid of heights. I've got one I'm coaching right now who's just always like, well, I'm afraid of heights. Like that's just a fact. And so those neural pathways get like so deep worn in. And when we're trying to ask them to go to a new thought, they have to build a new neural pathway, and then they have to use that new neural pathway often enough and not use the old neural pathway until the new one is now the freeway and the old one is the backcountry road. And eventually it gets grown over and it doesn't get used at all. And those neural pathways die out. So it's literally, if you think about like two roads and it's like, use this one, use this one, use this one, start building this one. This one's finally open for use. You kind of like, oh yeah, maybe that'd be faster. I'll take that one. And eventually you start taking it more, but you're still probably taking this one often too. And like, eventually you move to the new one. But this is why it doesn't just happen automatically when it's complete new thought that they don't yet believe. It also doesn't happen automatically for a thought that they don't have a lot of evidence of yet. So when they haven't created the evidence that helps their brain go, oh yeah, because, you know, kids always want to be confident, but we're confident when we have evidence that what we're thinking is true from things that we've seen happen in the past or things that we know about ourselves. And so they're going to have a hard time completely jumping onto that new neural pathway until they've started to build the evidence. But it's the thought and the pathway first that starts to build the evidence, and then it strengthens as more evidence comes along.
Can I give a quick, I think that sometimes this is helpful for you as coaches to think about. It's very similar to like muscle memory. So like
I think it is literally muscle memory.
Yeah, it's really the same thing, because I mean, your muscles move because your brain actually sends a motor pattern to the rest of your body, and that's like a neural pathway that it uses. And so like that's like, you know, when a gymnast is doing a skill and they kind of have a bad habit on the skill and it feels really, really difficult to break the bad habits. You're always like, oh, I just want to teach it right from the beginning, because it's much easier to do that than to fix it after they've already done it for years incorrectly. That's because you start from the beginning creating this neural pathway the way that you want it. Or you have a road that they've taken over and over and over again already for this skill, and building a new one is much harder and going back and forth and changing it. So literally the mindset idea of thought work and being able to switch to a new thought is exactly the same as a skill. And so I think this is just a really easy way to start seeing like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That connection of physical to mental mindset. Absolutely. There.
And you do the exact same process. So if you think about, you have a skill that they're doing incorrectly and you want to train them to do it a different way, you just start at the beginning and you retrain it from the beginning. And you know, often try to limit their numbers of doing the actual skill so that they're not continuing to reinforce doing the skill incorrectly. And you try to increase their numbers of the drills, or, you know, spotted shaping, or whatever it is that you do to get them into that new habit, that new way of doing a skill. And so, and then you're going to build them up through progressions until now they've got the new skill done with the new technique over here.
Yep. Okay, so let's talk about how do we get to the destination that we're looking for. So last week we talked about getting out all the thoughts that are going on, being able to open them up to be able to find what's really holding them back from being able to reach what they're trying to reach. And so I like to take a look at all those thoughts and really just pick one. And I like to say there's really not a right or wrong answer, but you can help them and look at them and be like, okay, which one of these thoughts do you feel like is really holding you back from reaching your goals? They probably have multiple, so it is okay, but just pick one. And then oftentimes where they're trying to go ends up being an opposite. Okay. And so I like to start there, at least with my gymnasts, of like an opposite. So in my early example, it was just like, I can't do this. The opposite of I can do this would actually help them reach their goal. I'm not good at bars. I am good at bars. So that's a really easy switch. Those are big ones. You can get into more specific and really detailed thoughts that they're trying to go to as well. But I think if you're beginning this process and learning this process, I think that's an easy way to get started. So the opposite of what they're currently thinking is typically what they want to be thinking in these situations. Stacie, do you have some more ideas of how to help them find that top thought where they're trying to go?
Yeah, and I think like in terms of starting out, doing less ingrained roads is helpful.
True.
So instead of like starting on like a huge, massive, I'm terrible at bars, I have a horrible swing, to like, I'm great at bars and I have a natural swing, maybe we just go to something a little less, like one skill, like I don't know. I can't think of
I'm
anything on
capable of
bars right now.
I'm capable of catching this bar release.
I'm capable of catching this bar release. Right now, I think I'm not capable. I'm going to go till I'm capable. And it's just like on one skill. Or maybe we do it on like one specific thing. Like I'm not very strong to I am strong. Or I don't have great shoulder flexibility to I do. And those seem like facts, but there's a lot of kids who will tell me like, oh, I'm not good. I don't have a good swing on bars, or I don't have a good shoulder flexibility. But then I talk to their coach and they're like, their shoulder flexibility is fine, or so like when it's a thought, when it's the thought that's the problem and it's not like what you actually see is true about them of reality. Like, but things that are smaller might be better to start with. But for sure, we asked you last week to have them do what we call a thought download. You just go through that and have them pick one. And then, yeah, moving to the opposite or moving to the thing that you think or they think, if I thought this, I could do it. Sometimes the other way, like I said, the top, they always want to feel confident.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you be thinking if you felt confident? Or what would you be thinking if you felt capable? So it's like what you can also get there sometimes through a feeling of
I
like,
get that with trust too. What would you be
yeah,
thinking if you trusted yourself? That's a big one.
I use that one all the time. Like they're always like, well, I'm scared of this. And I'm like, well, how could you trust yourself to keep yourself safe on the skill? And then what would you need to do? And what would you need to think to do that? So that can be a great one to find it. These are kind of things that you're going to do more while you maybe would sit down with them working on mindset work. You're not going to use a thought ladder, at least in this initial phase. So you're going to like build the thought ladder, which we're doing this week and next week. We're starting at the bottom, at the top. And then we're going to give you strategies towards the end of the month to actually practice it, that you might be able to then do more out on more out on the gym floor. This is going to be more something either that you assign them to do at home or that you sit down as a group and do together. You can draw out a ladder and be like, okay, now everybody write in their thought at the bottom. And then now pick a thought that you think would be at the top that's going to help you, do this thing. And a lot of times right now in this part of the gymnastics season, kids are trying to get new skills. If you have elites, you're getting ready for classics and nationals, and so they're in the competition phase, so their thoughts might be about believing the competition things. I'm a great competitor, I can hit when it counts,
I can compete just like I practice.
I can compete just like I practice, things about just like you go into classics and it's like the lights and the cameras and all the things, and it's just like it's still just gymnastics, like those kinds of things. But most of you who are listening to us, your kids are in the season where they're trying to get new skills. So you're probably going to want to focus in right now on thoughts that are going to help them get their new skills. So it can be specific to skills that they're struggling with, or maybe skills in general. And then we actually do this process again in December, where we then work on a belief that's going to help them for the competition season. So we try to work on a belief that's going to help them to get their skills, and then a belief that's going to help them for competition season twice, because this process is usually like the most important thing they do.
And I want to add one more thing. This could also be the time when like they believe they can do the skill, but they're not sure they can do it when they have to start putting stuff together. So like, especially on floor, maybe like their third tumbling pass, they're doing sprints before it or basic tumbling. So like, this is the time even where you could just take a simple of like, I am capable of doing this tumbling pass even when tired.
Yeah.
Or I'm so just like really, you can get so detailed on this of like, I am capable of doing my dismount at the end of a routine. Like just even starting to put things together, you can start thinking about, okay, is it just on one skill and getting the skill, or is it being able to do this skill in combination with other things? So
Yeah. And
I
I'm going
love
to go
this
one
time.
more.
Okay.
More often than not, our sweet little perfectionist gymnasts, their fears are more around messing up, not being perfect, um, like disappointing you as the coach, disappointing themselves, not getting it right, not being good. A lot of times they have a lot of deep beliefs around that. And those ones might be the hardest ones to start with, but they also are often the reasons that they're actually feeling afraid. You know, sometimes the fear is around like, yes, I'm doing something that's physically dangerous. I'm scared I'm going to get hurt. But most of the time, especially at the upper levels, they've kind of dealt with that, you know. They kind of are like, yeah, I might get hurt. That's part of gymnastics. The fears are usually more based around like, I shouldn't mess up, I can't make a mistake, um, those kinds of things. So
The or else's. If I do, then I won't get to go to college and I won't get to qualify. Like any of the or else's that come up is usually where those fears are
those
coming
fears
from.
are coming. Yeah. So I'm doing right now with the kids that I'm coaching one-on-one. We're doing a lot of thought ladders around it being okay to not be perfect, that no humans are perfect, that failing is the best way to learn. Like I can, that their power is actually what helps keep them safe. Like it's a lot more things of stuff like that. So all right, that's enough for 1 week. We will see you next week where we are going to keep jumping into this. I do want to mention a couple of things. We have an accompanying podcast called The Secret Podcast that actually teaches the thought ladder to straight directly to your gymnast. So it's like to your gymnast, to their parents. And so we will link in the show notes how to get access to that if you want to send your kids to learn it. And so that could be really helpful. They can learn it from us, and then you've learned it from us, and then you can do it with them in the gym. Sometimes it's easier to do it with them than to teach it to them. Or you guys can just all listen to it together in the gym. The episodes aren't that long, but it's designed to teach your kids the thought ladder. So that is one thing. And then the other thing, really would love your guys' support if you would, give us a review, like, or, star, leave a comment, any of those things. Forward this on to other coaches. We've been teaching at congresses this summer, and like we're getting so many reviews from coaches that are like, this is so helpful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I wish more coaches knew about it. Well, they can if you tell them. So I'd just love for you to, pass our podcast on to other coaches. We want to help. Our passion really is to get the gymnastics community these tools so that we as a community can all increase in mental health and enjoying our journey as we go in the sport of gymnastics. So all that said, see you next week. Bye.